Stop scrolling right now, because the hunt for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie just took a massive turn. Savannah Guthrie's mother vanished 51 days ago, leaving behind 0 suspects, 0 remains, and absolute silence. Detectives actually claim all the puzzle pieces to crack this mystery are in hand, yet nobody is in handcuffs. The official story collapsed weeks ago, so right now I am pulling back the curtain to reveal exactly what the physical clues are actually proving behind closed doors. Forget the media spin, the wild internet rumors, and those cheap headlines. Looking at the proof, a massive gap exists between the police press releases and the harsh reality described by specialists who walked that actual crime scene. Meanwhile, the physical clues are whispering a totally different reality, proving these versions clash entirely. Keep watching, because your entire perspective on this bizarre mystery will absolutely shatter before this clip finishes. We must begin with the core mystery that is currently driving every single veteran profiler and former cop crazy, since it anchors the entire puzzle. Did a random robbery simply spiral out of control? Or was a break-in completely fabricated right from the very start? However, resolving that specific dilemma completely alters the trajectory of the ongoing manhunt. It dictates the target you chase, the tactics deployed, and the psychological blueprint created. So we need to analyze this logically. The culprit approaches the property tucked away within the Catalina foothills of Tucson. Sometime before dawn on February 1st, a masked figure wearing gloves, carrying a pack, and packing heat triggered the smart doorbell footage in Arizona. That security feed cuts out at 1:47 a.m., while her heart monitor loses connection with her tech at 2:28 a.m. That leaves a 41-minute gap, and authorities claim the victim was abducted during that exact time frame. Assuming his original goal was just casual theft, what terrifying sequence of events indoors convinced him that violently snatching a medically fragile 84-year-old lady actually made more sense than simply sprinting away into the night? Thieves operate under the cover of darkness for a singular purpose. Avoiding interaction is paramount, which is why they target silent, slumbering properties to guarantee nobody crosses their path. When faced with extreme pressure, people inevitably default to terrible, irrational choices instead of logical ones. Consider what impossible circumstances must unfold indoors to convince a terrified thief, completely high on adrenaline and stumbling through the pitch-black hallways, that violently grabbing a conscious captive was smart. Dragging a medically compromised 84-year-old hostage into the night seems absolutely absurd. That theory completely crumbles from a psychological standpoint, while that 41-minute gap renders it utterly impossible to swallow. During those crucial moments, a guy intending to snag jewelry somehow shifted gears to execute a flawless abduction. He coordinated getaway vehicles, managed complex logistics, and perhaps contacted accomplices. Then he successfully dragged an 84-year-old captive from her mattress, marched her through the property, down the path, and directly into an idling car, which requires extreme calculation, not panic. This implies a highly coordinated mission, which simply cannot materialize flawlessly within 41 minutes. Someone mapped this out meticulously, leaving us wondering about the true mastermind and their timeline. So right now, we must examine the property closely because those quiet walls hide the facts. Number 1 is the bloodstains. Genetic analysis verified the victim's blood splattered right around the main doorway, forming a distinct pathway rather than an isolated puddle. Those drops terminate abruptly where the concrete path meets the asphalt, while the lack of large puddles confirms she remained conscious and mobile while exiting the building. The droplets vanish at the pavement's edge, proving somebody loaded her into a transport right there, confirming she absolutely never wandered off alone. An attacker physically guided or hauled her toward that specific location before she vanished into the darkness completely. The second crucial element is her sleeping quarters. A massive clue the mainstream press completely overlooked. How did her private sanctuary appear when authorities breached the threshold? And were those blankets torn apart? Did torn linens and overturned furniture reveal a frantic midnight brawl? Or did everything appear perfectly neat? A violent abduction at 2 o'clock in the morning typically leaves behind highly visible, undeniable chaos. However, if she was fully conscious and greeted an intruder near the foyer, the environment remains pristine. The condition of her mattress reveals the exact timeline of indoor events. exposing if she possessed any foresight or attempted to physically defend herself. Cops deliberately buried this detail, and their calculated silence brings us straight to the third factor, the infiltration point. After endless drone surveillance, intense neighborhood interviews, and deep forensic sweeps, nobody has found shattered glass or splintered deadbolts to suggest a violent break-in at the 84-year-old victim's residence. She resided within those exclusive Catalina slopes for years, enjoying an upscale community completely untouched by severe violence. Could this elderly resident have simply forgotten to engage the deadbolt that evening, lulled by decades of absolute safety? An unlatched lock meant the trespasser glided inside without triggering sirens, causing a ruckus, or fighting at the entrance. A predator simply strolled right through the entryway, meaning they either confidently anticipated an unsecured lock beforehand, or they meticulously stalked this property long enough to bypass security effortlessly without smashing glass. We really need to examine the perpetrator's inside knowledge, because that instantly shatters any illusion of a random attack. This guy had the surveillance blind spots memorized, since only the front porch Nest device managed to record his presence. Federal agents managed to retrieve extra footage in March 2026 from motion sensors monitoring the rear and sides. Yet that phantom intruder is completely absent from all those frames, approaching the main lens purposely to disable it. He navigated the entire estate without triggering a single alternative security feed. Such precision implies massive luck or total awareness of security angles, plus a deep understanding of the victim's daily routine. Showing up past 147 A.M., the assailant possessed absolute certainty regarding her presence and extreme vulnerability inside. Tomasa Cioni, her son-in-law, left her there around 9:50 p.m., essentially 4 hours prior, meaning the intruder tracked that time frame. Then comes January 11th, a time frame detectives constantly grill Nancy's community about, which happened exactly 3 weeks prior to the vanishing. A March 21st public address from the Guthrie household begged locals across Tucson to check personal surveillance concerning January 11th. Right now, relatives issued a desperate call to action for Tucson locals to provide fresh intelligence that might finally crack this mystery. Morning anchor Savannah Guthrie and her siblings believe their Tucson neighbors hold the missing puzzle piece regarding their mother, potentially delivering the vital breakthrough that law enforcement desperately needs right now. During an official release, the Guthrie clan insisted that somebody holds vital information. They desperately urged Tucson citizens to comb through their memories surrounding the critical window of January 31st when she vanished, alongside the pre-dawn period of February 1st. Marking the exact moment officials suspect she was abducted. Furthermore, the late hours of January 11th remain deeply scrutinized by police forces for currently undisclosed motives, maintaining intense fixation on that specific calendar mark, since January 11th fell exactly 20 days prior to the horrific incident. Up to this very moment, law enforcement refused to clarify the underlying importance of that particular time frame. However, emerging reports now suggest that January 11th was once directly tied to the chilling visual evidence of the disguised intruder, which was originally extracted from the Guthrie family's front porch smart doorbell system. Seeking further insight, we throw the broadcast over to Brian Anton, a correspondent tracking this investigation since day one. Brian, what specific doorbell clue drew detectives toward January 11th? Honestly, this January 11th detail inside the family's plea fascinates me deeply. Elizabeth? Since the relatives finally publicly validated the weight of January 11th, happening precisely 3 weeks prior to Nancy's vanishing. And during my local area canvassing, multiple residents repeatedly mentioned federal agents knocking on doors and asking, "Do you possess any security captures from January 11th?" Did anybody witness unusual activity that particular evening? So witnessing the relatives openly validate their own fascination with that specific timeline truly sparks curiosity. Our local sheriff just clarified. Elizabeth, recalling a pair of still frames generated by the smart lens mounted upon Nancy's entryway. According to the department head, the tech company originally dated a single snapshot back to January 11th, before backtracking shortly after to claim they lacked absolute certainty regarding the true chronological timestamp. Even so, it strongly implies this suspect, perhaps accompanied by an accomplice, actively scouted out the victim's property beforehand. Seriously. Creeping around the perimeter 3 weeks prior demonstrates beyond a doubt that the attack involved heavy premeditation. Elizabeth. It truly breaks the mind realizing 51 days have passed since she vanished. Elizabeth. My heart aches for them. Thanks, Brian. We appreciate it. Insiders informed major networks how the infiltrator potentially approached the threshold earlier minus his usual gear, likely running surveillance operations long before executing the February 1st invasion. Meanwhile, the chief, seeking absolute accuracy, declared how the tech giant could never authenticate the January 11th timestamp. Yet federal agents relentlessly queried locals. Relatives publicly spotlighted the date, and detectives continue prioritizing its massive relevance. Assuming the stalker is identical to the kidnapper, he bypassed mere assumptions for calculated tactical preparation. This brings us to tangible forensics, pointing toward a grim reality that mainstream audiences remain highly reluctant to embrace fully. Multiple conspirators undeniably executed this horrifying abduction together. Consider the following rationale. Sanguine stains mysteriously terminate near the pavement, indicating the attackers shoved the victim inside an awaiting transport. Any getaway automobile demands a dedicated driver, prompting detectives to aggressively pursue the hypothesis that the disguised porch lurker acted as outside muscle, assisting an unseen partner dragging the target outdoors. Recent broadcasts revealed federal authorities revisiting the subdivision to interrogate locals regarding former tenants who abandoned an adjacent residence right before the kidnapping. 1. Former Regional Tactical Authority squad leader informed journalists that operatives currently investigate if the abandoned structure operated as an operational base before the strike. Shadowy figures likely vanished into this community, tracking daily habits for weeks prior to February 1st. Even Sheriff Nanos openly admitted a multi-person crew might have pulled this off. The top cop always kept that theory alive. A lone amateur didn't just snap. Every shred of collected proof. The surveillance, outsmarting lenses, that idling getaway car, and a 41-minute gap prove extreme teamwork. We currently have more than $1.3 million sitting unclaimed. Untraceable bills. Completely nameless. Zero identification asked for. Yet nobody is talking. How many insiders actually hold the real story here? Barely anybody. Keeping 3 guys totally quiet is practically impossible, particularly with $1.3 million dangling around. We need to unpack those mysterious 10 days nobody can seem to justify. Back on February 6th, Sheriff Chris Nanos faced reporters directly, stating without hesitation, "We are ruling out absolutely nobody." Then 10 days passed until February 16th brought a sudden update. Relatives of the victim, meaning every brother, sister, and partner, were suddenly completely absolved of any wrongdoing here. Zero fresh clues were formally shared during that 10-day span. Forensic samples gathered indoors were sitting at an independent Florida facility awaiting testing. The top official personally admitted they hit a massive roadblock. Those hand coverings discovered 2 miles away simply belonged to some neighborhood diner employee entirely unrelated to this missing person's nightmare. Relatives got a free pass prior to genetic lab reports arriving, prior to finding perpetrators. Long before a single handcuff clicked. Listen, I should recite the lead investigator's exact wording. That Sunday, chatting with a major tabloid, he declared, "0 people, and I'm quoting verbatim here, have officially been removed from our radar." By Monday, his department dropped a memo claiming her inner circle, quote, "is totally off the hook as potential culprits." Come Tuesday, yet another memo dropped. Relatives haven't earned a formal suspect label, which stands miles apart from actually getting fully exonerated. Look, authorities haven't named me either, yet I face 0 risk of prosecution simply due to residing way up in Connecticut. However, things look drastically different for neighbors just a few houses away from her mom, or those residing exactly 2 miles out, like the victim's sister and her brother-in-law. Now, I am hardly accusing that couple of hurting our missing woman at all. Yet I must point out, the boss insisted, from day one nobody gets a free pass. Nobody is off limits. Absolutely nobody has dodged scrutiny. While constantly repeating this stance, authorities dragged her relative's vehicle away, locking it up for forensic inspection. His department, alongside Federal Bureau agents, consistently swarmed the sibling and her partner's private property time and time again in endless waves, hitting them mid-slumber with zero illuminations, snapping flash photos around 2:10 and 10:30 in the morning. Soon after, squads returned for yet another pitch-black evening raid. Listen, what sparked such intense maneuvers, cops definitely skipped pulling those stunts at the adjacent properties. Furthermore, the residence belonging to her sibling and her spouse was never ground zero. Then, what exactly justifies launching a full-blown forensic deep dive indoors, unless detectives genuinely suspect that either one or both partners played a direct role in this beloved woman vanishing completely? Leadership refuses to clarify the sudden pivot. Seasoned broadcaster Ashley Banfield, who bravely worked 9/11 ruins, hosted nightly CNN slots, and anchored 5 solid years across major networks, informed listeners this past February 4th about insider police tips labeling the brother-in-law, the final individual, spotting her breathing, an absolute top-tier target. The anchor quickly added context, likening him to another famous dad falsely accused before cops rescued his kid. That reporter hasn't ever walked back her statement. Following their exoneration memo, her online reply read, "Zero shifted." A retired Federal Bureau operative hit conservative cable channels that identical afternoon relatives beat the heat, cautioning viewers. This announcement relied purely upon feelings instead of hard facts. The expert claimed, without proving exactly who occupied those rooms, pardoning people remains impossible. Check out another newly verified detail we possess. Tommaso and his wife Annie supposedly passed lie detector exams. Speaking alongside a retired tactical team member during a prominent daytime broadcast, the host suggested these results give society permission to drop its pitchforks. Meanwhile, our top badge constantly praises her blood relatives for showing absolute transparency since minute 1. Yet that mysterious narrative pivot separating February 6th from February 16th lacks any transparent explanation whatsoever. Plus, that official campaign to fire the sheriff requires 120,000 legitimate signatures across 120 days for a fresh ballot. Regional county commissioners gather this coming March 24th, exploring massive holes inside this commander's professional file, featuring severe claims regarding him committing perjury during past sworn testimony. Absolutely nothing here brings her safely home. However, internal drama dragging down police work right now remains something this fragile mystery desperately cannot handle. Let me break down our current reality. A 20 to 24 member strike team divided perfectly among local deputies and Federal Bureau investigators continues hammering away at these clues. A massive tech sweep completely rebooted this case in March 2026, pulling fresh footage and deep digital footprints. The tapes showed absolutely nothing, forcing agents to heavily grill locals regarding crucial timelines. Investigators probed an empty neighboring lot as a potential launch pad, though genetic evidence remains their absolute best lead. Forensic teams pulled foreign biological material from the residence, completely unlinked to her usual contacts. Local authorities called it a blended sample, holding traces from multiple people, basically turning any system search into a headache. Those discarded hand coverings discovered 2 miles away carried a different male profile, but detectives cleared the nearby diner employee. Now, authorities are pivoting hard toward cutting-edge ancestral genetic tracing. That exact method caught the Golden State Killer and the Idaho attacker, hoping to crack this biological mystery entirely, after standard system queries completely flatlined. Former federal agent Jim Clemente made a massive public revelation about the intruder leaving their face totally exposed. The attacker exhaled throughout the residence, leaving tiny bits of hair, skin, and moisture everywhere. All that physical evidence might be chilling in a Florida testing facility today, desperately needing a matching identity. Consider the Gilgo Beach murders, basically one of the most twisted puzzles in modern national history, which broke wide open simply by reviewing old files with fresh perspectives, completely tossing out outdated theories. They reconstructed everything from scratch, meaning the key to this mystery might already be buried inside a server, test tube, or mobile ping. It all comes down to someone finally connecting the right dots. One glaring issue has haunted this investigation for weeks, and we need to drag it out into the harsh light. An 84-year-old cardiac patient was snatched from her property. leaving behind her cellular device and vital daily pills. Professionals analyzing the situation confirmed that Nancy probably succumbed within 72 hours, missing those crucial prescriptions. Relying heavily on past crime trends, that exact specialist suspects her remains, assuming the worst outcome, are probably dumped just 2 to 5 miles away, out in the brutal, rock-solid landscape of the Tucson desert. Hiding anything out there is tough, but doable. A harsh reality Savannah Guthrie bravely admitted while acknowledging they might fail. She might have perished a long time ago, a heartbreaking possibility we must absolutely accept. Her life could already be over. Perhaps she finally ascended to her creator, joyfully waltzing across the sky alongside her mother, her father, sweet brother Pierce, and our precious dad. Should that be her tragic destiny, we will somehow find the strength to make peace. Still, we desperately demand to learn her final location. Handling a rescue mission versus hunting a killer demands totally contrasting strategies, unique field operations, and vastly separate goals. Executing both strategies simultaneously is definitely the smartest move for the authorities. However, getting totally stuck on a single theory is exactly how these mysteries freeze over completely. Bounty money topped $1.3 million, so dial 1-800-CALL, the feds for untraceable cash, back on March 21st. The Guthrie relatives begged local Tucson folks to dig deep into memories. They highlighted dates around January 31st, dawn on February 1st, and late night January 11th, convinced a resident unknowingly holds a massively important clue. Absolutely true. Considering 51 days gone, a 41-minute gap, and blended genetics sitting in a testing queue, an empty lot heavily probed, plus a massive bounty failing to loosen any lips whatsoever, and a top cop staying silent about a 10-day shift, proving this mystery is merely unsolved right now, not entirely impossible to crack. Anyone holding secrets about January 31st, the break of dawn on February 1st, or January 11th must dial 1-800-225-5304, dial 1-800, call the feds without identification. A massive payout awaits. Because Nancy Guthrie vanished 51 days ago, and somebody definitely knows something. This case is not just about a disappearance, it is a powerful lesson about awareness, vulnerability, and the hidden dangers that can exist behind ordinary routines. It reminds us that safety is never something we should take for granted, even in places that feel familiar and secure. One of the most important lessons is the value of paying attention to small details. A short gap in time, a silent camera, or an unusual presence can hold the truth that changes everything. In real life, critical clues are often quiet and easy to overlook. Awareness is not fear, it is responsibility. This story also highlights how preparation and intention can exist behind actions that seem random. It teaches us to think deeper, question what doesn't make sense, and avoid accepting easy explanations without evidence. Another powerful message is the role of community. Justice does not belong only to investigators, it depends on ordinary people remembering, speaking up, and sharing what they know. One small piece of information can break an entire case open. In the end, this case leaves us with a lasting truth. Protect your loved ones, stay alert to what feels wrong, and never ignore the details because sometimes they are the only voice the truth has left.